The watch crime epidemic has been a hot topic over the last few years, and one of a few different issues that have soured the watch hobby in the recent past. Many have tried to highlight the problem, but with limited success. But now the BBC has aired a documentary called Hunting the Rolex Rippers, about criminal gangs that prey on wealthy victims in affluent parts of London. I'll put an iPlayer link to the documentary in the description below, or if you can't access iPlayer or don't have time, you can read the BBC article on the documentary, which I will also link down below. In the documentary, a few different characters are interviewed, including the leader of a criminal gang who employs young women to act as spotters and identify potential targets, and teenagers to do the dirty work of threatening or attacking victims to steal the watches. The gang leader states that his activities are purely about money and he feels no guilt about doing what he does. And you can understand why, as £50 million worth of watches were reported stolen in London in 2022, according to information shared with the BBC by the Watch Register. And in the first 6 months of this year, 3,190 watches were reported stolen in London, with 1/5 of the thefts involving violence against the victim. Also interviewed is a woman claiming to be a legitimate watch dealer with 15 to 20 years of experience in the industry, who states that the industry is very dirty and full of criminals, and that the watches are often stolen to order. This won't be a revelation to many people. We know there are a lot of shady characters in the watch industry, and it isn't just a few bad apples. The people that expose themselves in public through social media are only the tip of the iceberg. The host also interviews a police officer who describes his efforts to tackle the crime, but they don't really shed much light other than to say that stolen watches are often sold on the black market or exported abroad. There are a couple of notable takeaways from the documentary. The first is how quickly the perpetrators of these crimes are willing to resort to violence. But it's not that surprising really. These people have nothing to lose. If you live in the UK, you'll know that like many Western countries, the UK is in a terminal decline. There has been a slow and gradual breakdown of law and order. Infrastructure is crumbling and public services are buckling under the pressure of an ever-increasing and ageing population. There's a lack of well-paid jobs and a lack of affordable, quality housing. It's no mystery that young people turn to crime. It's easy money for people with few prospects. But with that being said, I think everyone has agency, everyone has choice, and those that choose to terrify and traumatise innocent people are scumbags. And though you may understand why they do it, it can never be justified. Some of the victims may well be very wealthy, but that's no excuse. Ultimately, it's not the little guy that facilitates these sorts of crimes. It's what happens to the watches after the theft that makes the whole thing possible. It's organised crime and it's not easy to tackle. And that's probably the most frightening takeaway. The thought of who might be involved. Perhaps people who appear to be respectable business people running respectable businesses. If you're wearing a Rolex right now, it's possible that through no fault of your own, you are wearing a stolen watch that was ripped from someone's wrist with a machete held to their throat. And that's quite a scary thought. I'm a big believer in being able to wear what you like, whenever you want to, in whatever situation you please. But we don't live in a utopia. If you're out there flaunting it, then you can't be shocked if you receive unwanted attention. It doesn't matter if it's a fancy watch, or gold jewellery, or a nice car, or a bulging wallet full of cash. If you have something other people want, the unscrupulous may try to take it. I know some will say that this is victim blaming, but unfortunately, that is the reality of living in the UK in 2023. There are people who have tried to come up with solutions to the problem, with ideas like watch databases, or demanding increased police presence, or increased custodial sentences, but I don't think any of those ideas are real solutions because it's organised crime, and taking a few kids off the street carrying machetes might seem like a great achievement, but without apprehending those pulling the strings, it's a pretty futile effort. There will be loads more kids waiting in the wings for the opportunity to do exactly the same thing. People aren't afraid of the police or the justice system anymore, and they're not really worried about the consequences of their actions. That's a cultural issue, not a legal issue. The laws are already in place to deter this sort of crime. They just don't work anymore. If you haven't watched the documentary, it is worth a watch, and it's only half an hour long, or give the article a quick skim, it's worthwhile. I would like to end the video on a positive note, but there isn't one really. Unless there are significant political changes in this country and other Western countries, the situation is only likely to get worse and worse.